it's clear, Charles, Kamala Harris is a terrible candidate and a shitty woman. How are you?
I'm great. The art department with the has put a tie on this picture or a bow on this picture, whatever you want to say. It's just a fantastic one.
Thank you.
All this does, all the art department is doing, Jason, is making me, as they say in the Bahamas, Jones, which means long for. My new TV setup whenever my apartment finally does get finished. Because I mean, I think when I start throwing parties in the apartment, I'm going to have this. You walk in and there's a counter that's basically a bar area, and I put a TV right to the side of it on your left as you walk into the apartment, where I'll scroll all these posters. And I think many people have difficulty getting past the TV. There's so many interesting posters.
It's true, Charles. It's what you're describing. It almost seems reminiscent of, didn't they have some kind of like in the 70s or whatever, they made some kind of Playboy TV show at Hugh Hefner's house where he was like Playboy After Dark or something like that. And they had like Bill Cosby and Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the first time I saw it. I think it was just an Apple program or some program tailored for Apple. Sadly, it was at Clarissa's memorial where the kids had selected a whole bunch. She took a lot of photos and put a whole collection of photos into this kind of thing, and it was just mesmerizing because in addition you could put sound into it. So you just have the sound and you could set it every 15 seconds. It switches every 30, every 60, whatever. And there's just the thing that actually I think will be mesmerizing is that, all of these photos, all of these posters were done by one person in the art department. So they all reflect a certain style, and they're all different and they're all different timing and stuff. So it's quite a suite of excellence.
Well, thank you, Charles. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you ought to give the employee in the art department a new raise.
Exactly. But we do have to talk about what an incredibly terrible candidate Kamala Harris is. It's almost one of the most unbelievable things anybody has ever witnessed that they're,
You're right, Jason. I'm sorry to jump over you, but it's as if you said, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to buy Nobu from that idiot De Niro or whoever owns it now.
You start serving Chick-fil-A there.
No, I've got something even worse than that. We'll serve Spam sushi.
Right.
Spam with mayonnaise. We have this Spam sushi with mayonnaise on it. or what's that? The Miracle Whip. We put Miracle Whip and Spam together in sushi. Not put it on rice. We'll put it on Cheetos.
But then actually try to tell people that it's still great.
Yeah, you're not cool unless you got Cheetos. Those flakes, that orange flakes all over your mouth. I mean, this person, honestly, if you were trying to come up with the worst possible candidate, you couldn't have done a better job, right? If you're going to try to pitch change, you don't say, we are the change we've been waiting for if you've been running, in theory, helping to run the country for the last 4 years. Right. And you can't credibly say, well, I was vice president. I was with Joe all the time. Now, Joe parenthetically is saying it's not safe for him to go out in crowds. Well, you must have done a great job. I don't remember Trump when he was president saying, I can't go out. It's not safe in my country as president with Secret Service protection.
That's
How does
crazy.
Joe Biden say, look, I have Secret Service protection and it's not safe for me, but it's okay for you.
You go outside.
You visitors, to go around New York City. If I'm too scared to go out, why should you be afraid? I mean, and Kamala Harris is supposedly joined at the hip. I use that phrase advisedly with Joe Biden. I mean, involved in every major decision. So she let this thing go out there, and now she's, not even campaigning, but trying to pretend that she's best suited to get us out of the messes she created. I mean, it's as if, I don't know, it's not even bottom of the class. It's as if a bunch of, 2-year-old kids are running the campaign who don't even know how to speak yet.
They're doing one of their oldest tricks in the book, Charles. They are now saying that, oh, well, Kamala Harris, she's dialing back this unrealized gains tax. Instead of 40%, we just do 28% to try to make people think, oh, well, okay, that's okay. But the fact is 1% of this would be ridiculous.
And as I have mentioned in prior broadcasts, and I think a viewer noticed it and put it up on Twitter, the real polls have only just begun to come out, and they show Trump crushing her on the issues that will drive likely voters to the polls, which are economics. We have a jobs report coming out on Friday morning. It's not going to be good. And the last one in October, I'd have to check the calendar. Well, there will be one coming out in October. I don't know if there is one. I suspect there may be one that comes out right before the election, but you're not going to get good jobs news. The situation in Brazil, I remember back in 2008, 9, and 10 when I was dealing with top hedge funds. And we were talking about, the case to short GE and what's going on in China. And this really shrewd guy who's now died, Alex Porter, was one of the top short sellers on the planet back then. He made the point that actually, if you want to play China as a long, the best way to do that is to buy shares in Brazilian mining companies, because China needs that mining output to fuel its theoretical growth, or its actual growth. And so now you have a dual massive structural negative. You have the chickens coming home to roost, those that aren't eaten in China. That economy is in free fall. And you have this nutcase Supreme Court justice going after Musk and Musk's assets in Brazil, destroying the investment case to put money inside Brazil. So you have two significant economies that are linked together, jumping off a cliff together. And that's not going to be fixed prior to November 5th. So with that cloud on the horizon, the office cloud, the fact that you and I noticed, and it's interesting, I won't say where I am right now, but I'm with one of our friends, who happens to be in the area where I am. And he was mesmerized by our walk around videos. He's a guy who, and we won't mention his name, he's a guy who was a journalist. He's retired.
People have seen him on the show.
And,
People have seen him on the show way in the past.
Okay, well, I don't want to reveal where I am, so that's what I'm not saying. Yeah, but anyway, he said he was mesmerized by the walk-arounds in New York City in particular, and shocked by what he saw and how much deterioration there was. And one of the themes that we pounded really from the get-go was how office space was so vacant. Forget, the street scenes and all that, but, every block you walk around, you've been doing recent walk-arounds that tell the tale even more vividly. Everywhere you look, there's vacant office space. And as I, as a former, and you as a current business owner, but I as a former business owner, think about the merits, if ever, of returning to a major metropolitan area in New York, in America, I don't see the case for leasing office space or owning office space. In a city like New York or Boston or Philadelphia or DC, you just go down the long list of them, most of which are controlled by Democrats. So with that long, rambling summary, I just don't see there being a case, even if the Fed cuts interest rates a lot to push the stock market up. I don't think that Harris and Biden can say, look, what we did over 4 years is working. And so the people who are going to vote their pocketbook are going to come out in droves and vote. And Kamala can bus people. There's a story how 12 buses worth of people from Massachusetts were bused to a rally in New Hampshire to try to make the crowd swell. You could try those optics, but that's not going to change the voting reality in New Hampshire. People are going to come out and they're going to vote their pocketbook and they're going to vote these assholes out. And there's also now beginning to be, there's the stories by the left saying that, Republicans are concerned about the impact about Trump. Bullshit. Rhinos are concerned about that. True conservatives and patriots love what he's doing, and they're going to come out and vote. And they may vote. There may be some elections where the mainstream is saying the margin for the Democrat is positive or razor thin, where Republicans pick up more than you think. So we're already starting to see the better polls, and those are going to be good news for Trump.
We're still hearing the same nonsense, though, here, Charles. Here's Politico. They want me to pay to read their nonsense, but they're saying, here, we'll just look at it in Google, Harris pulls ahead. I mean, it's absurd.
But I believe that's politischmo.
Yeah.
I mean, Politico has been taken over by the crazy hard left loons. Remember, these type of places, Politico, The Hill, Washington Post, Times, etc., they need access to income. And Reuters and AP, they all need access to incumbents to write their stories. And the incumbents and their staffs, typically there's a hard ass team below a senator or vice president or whatever, who says, listen, you run a negative story, you're never going to meet Kamala Harris again.
Charles, look at this.
So there's going to be
this is this thing, 270 to win. And then, I mean, look, every state, it's like razor margin. I mean, this is ridiculous. I just don't believe this. Harris leading, I mean, come on.
He's not.
But this is what
She's
this
bleeding.
says. See, this seems more like it. Trump by 27%.
Yeah, again, you have to do what these people do to make these stories is they get a nationwide sample that does not reflect underlying reality in each important electoral college state. Right? You cannot do a survey. You can't present as meaningful a survey that says samples people from California, New York, and let's say Illinois, and oversamples Democrats, undersamples Republicans, and picks, quote, independents who are actually progressives. That's not a real poll, but that's what they're doing.
They love to cheat is what it is. Charles, this was pretty funny, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of like you and I hanging out, because it almost seems like maybe Trump is rubbing off a little bit on RFK. He usually doesn't say things kind of rude like this, but it's funny as hell. He's ripping Harris, saying that the president should be able to put together a sentence in English.
That's right. I mean, it reminds me actually of my 10th college reunion. It was the first one I went to, and it was straight. My class was about 1,300 students, and let's say 400 showed up. And so there was one, big rubber chicken dinner where you had to, you go to the front of it's the entry of the dining hall, and there you tell the maitre d' what you want. Do you want the salmon, the chicken, the beef, or whatever? And I'm standing there with this woman I never knew in college, who happened to be a Black woman, and she couldn't read the menu. She was 10 years out of Yale.
Wow.
And she wasn't foreign. She wasn't foreign either. I thought she was kidding.
Maybe she had an eyesight problem.
Wasn't wearing glasses.
Maybe that was the problem.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, it was, to even have to debate whether you should be able to put a sentence together. I mean, think of the Lincoln-Douglas debates, or Lincoln's speech before Cooper Union, in I think whatever it was, 1858 or whatever year it was. I mean, the standards that were required pre-radio of political candidates, you really had to speak. You had to speak without notes, in complete sentences and paragraphs with structure. And you had to be prepared in these. It was kind of like in the UK, they have Prime Minister's question time. If you've ever seen that, where you go up as Prime Minister and you have face down the entire Parliament, and speaker after speaker comes up and asks not like softball questions, they're really tough questions, and the Prime Minister has to get up with no help and try to answer these questions. And it's like the Olympics versus playing tiddlywinks. I mean, it's ridiculous. So that you got this candidate in Harris who seems to specialize in making up accents and spreading lies, or trying to sell lies as truth, thinking that she's going to go up against a media sensation. I mean, unless Trump wakes up with a rumbly stomach or some other ailment, it's not going to be pretty to watch on the 10th
No,
for
definitely not. Did
Harris.
you happen to see this exchange, Charles, between Peter Doocy? He asked Karine Jean-Pierre about what's up with the weird accent from Kamala Harris. KJP acted like, what the hell are you talking about? I think it would have been funny if she had delivered that in like a Southern accent or something really, like a British accent, really put it on.
Well, the nuance that I found hilarious is that apparently, and I didn't initially appreciate this until this morning, my time, that Harris appeared in Detroit, which is not in the South, and Pittsburgh, which is closer to the South. It's actually not far away from the Mason-Dixon line. She chose to use the Southern accent in Detroit.
She doesn't know what she's doing.
Isn't that like, the only way I can relate to you is to pretend you're from the South in Detroit. So I'm going to talk. I mean, what the hell?
She's out of her mind. I mean, it's like I've said so many times, it's just an insult to each of us that this is, other people are seeing that this is somebody who people think can be president. You know how like sometimes it's like one thing if you're having a fight with your family in your house, but when it's like at the airport, it's like, oh my God, this is that.
Right. And there's nothing cool. And, who is advising her to walk around in sneakers?
That's what I mean. Everybody all around the world sees this woman. Charles, what does Putin think about Kamala Harris? What does she think about Kamala Harris?
Not much. But I mean, think about the contrast. She's simultaneously wearing, is it Converse or Vans or I don't know what sneakers they are, and a $62,000 necklace. What message are you sending?
Doesn't know what she's doing.
Is she going to dress like Marie Antoinette? Yes, next.
Let them eat cake.
Right. Ooh, it's good to be the king. Mel Brooks. I mean, it's the peasants are revolting. I mean, this is fucking crazy. Now. I wouldn't let my kids go to high school dressed like this.
Yeah. No, very bad. Very bad. It's crazy. I just don't see how she hopes to get elected. I mean, this is just a clown show. Almost like any movie that we think of, Dave, or just even the stupidest movie you could possibly think of. This is much stupider.
Why would you? Yeah, and this Tim Walz guy. I mean, apparently his. A lot of times there are differences, strong differences inside families on political views. So I don't necessarily say it's the end of Walz that all his family seems to be against his being vice president. But when you put it together with all the other pieces of his fable, Coach Walz, actually he couldn't be coach because he had a DUI, the trips to China, which are really suspicious, including on the anniversary of Tiananmen Square on his honeymoon. Why would you, of all the places to go?
Wait, Charles, they won't let him be the coach, but he can run for vice president. That's good.
Right. Put me in, coach. I mean, why you would select this guy? Who vetted this guy? Eric Holder supposedly vetted this guy.
Terrible.
And is the big theme, if you think about it, if whenever I would engage in, this is now decades ago, in hostile defenses or raids of companies, you always try to put yourself in the shoes of the other party. And what would they want? What are they trying to get? So you can figure out whether there's a deal that can be done or not. And thinking about the Chinese, in 1988, they really had nothing. They had 10-year plans or 5-year plans, but they were on paper. They had no industry to speak of. They had no ability to compete with the United States and the West. So is it tough to imagine that, coming after centuries of the Opium Wars, where we sent poison, and Americans were involved in this, poison into the Chinese economy and doomed generations of Chinese to live in poverty? Is it crazy to think that they would say, well, we could do the same thing to America? Let's find some dumbass crooks, of which there have got to be many, and let's give the Clintons money, and let's give the Bushes money, and let's give Obama and Biden and others money, and McConnell money, and let's buy them off for spit while we get into the WTO. And we get this advantage and that advantage, and we get Hong Kong when we shouldn't have it. and we get ports around the world, and we just, if we get something that's worth $1 trillion, and so we pay Biden $100 million, and we own him, own his family. And that, to me, I think has been happening. I think it has been a bipartisan effort by the Chinese and others to go and do what they've done, to get a stranglehold through bribery and deceit and corruption and honeypots and other sordid means, to create the illusion that there's democracy in America, that there's advancement in academia, that our media is objective. This is one big tragic show. And they think they've rigged it again, and they can put this bumpkin, this idiot team, into the White House and really get us ready for re-education camps and worse. And it's up to the voters to stand up and do something about it, because this is a tragic farce we can't let happen.
Yeah. Charles, we had a terrible shooting in Georgia, another high school shooting. The kid was 14 doing the shooting, still alive. They caught him.
Well, again, it's like interactions with police. When you think about this, there are a lot of guns, and certainly this is a tragedy. There are a lot of guns. There's also a story today about how the left media is trying to reduce the reporting concerning the number of times that bad shooters are stopped by good shooters. There are a lot of incidents where people with a gun stop a crime from happening. Right. And so there's not balance in this reporting. Yes, it's a tragedy. And yes, you got to feel sorry for the parents of this kid, for the victims of this kid, for the community, et cetera. But bad things do happen in a country of 335 million every day. And if we didn't have guns in the United States, we'd be like Australia or the UK, where there's no way to stop unprincipled crooks like this Starmer guy in the UK, leader of Australia, or now Lula in Brazil. There's no way to restrain the government, and you certainly don't want to see that. We see what governments do in the West and in the United States with impunity, the way they treat you and me and our audience. Imagine what they will do if they knew that we were defenseless. Imagine.
And it's what they want. I mean, it's, they try to do this stuff through lawfare and, making everybody from January 6th into felons. That's what they want, is they want to get you into court where they manipulate and control the proceedings, and they're still trying to do it to Trump. I mean, you can tell when they tried to physically kill him and it failed, they just get him back into court. Revolver is saying that their new campaign jet was mocked for looking like a tampon.
Honestly, I mean, I think this side, I've seen it happen in the corporate world, but there are too many private planes that are available to politicians now. It's beyond absurd. The military leadership goes around the world in private planes. I'm sure Jake Sullivan flies around in a private plane, Nancy Pelosi in a private plane, now these idiot candidates in a private plane. Bernie Sanders was really happy to fly private. Elizabeth Warren probably flies private. Certainly AOC is getting ready to fly private. Most human beings don't fly private. It's incredibly expensive. And the very same people who are belly aching about imminent death of the planet because of climate change are the first to jump into and insist on having private planes. I'd love to see an honest accounting for campaign spending every year. Where does this money really go? Candidates raise it, and what is it spent on? How much is wasted?
Keeps it at the house. You got to keep a few grand around.
A pregnant daughter.
Unbelievable.
I mean, that's another.
Well, we got a lot of stuff to talk about in the First Amendment Forum, Charles. We're going to have to wrap it up here in just a minute. People who aren't yet following you on X can do that at Charles Ortel. And if people aren't following me, there's been a lot of activity on X. I've got this account here at JG_CSTT. Speaking of accounting, Charles, I've been finding a lot of stuff about this this neighborhood. What is the thing called? It's the Neighborhood Association for intercultural affairs. This woman has no idea she's paying an embezzler $650,000. We can take a quick look at their EIN and their 990 and see how much money they're stealing if we have a chance to do that. And if you are so inclined, would you be interested in looking at that, Charles?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's hard to do it right now, but yeah.
We'll look at it a little bit, but we'll be back in just a minute. Join us on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see everybody in 5 minutes.